Hi, my name is Estefania Gonzalez, and this is my third storytelling performance for my storytelling class over at San Jose State University by Professor Renestes. Now, this story is called He Who Follows Me. This is a scary story that was geared towards kids, but I have edited it so that it can be geared more towards adults. So, this is He Who Follows Me. A long time ago, there was this married couple by the names of Bill and Helen Mason. They loved taking pictures of old houses and mansions. So one day while they were on vacation, they found this old southern-looking mansion. So they decided to take a peek and take pictures. Now, as they looked around, they noticed that it was run down and unoccupied. So they decided to take pictures of the front and over on the side. But as they started looking towards the back of the house, they noticed a strange building that was there. It looked like it was almost brand new. It was kept very well. So as they got closer, they noticed that this building was made out of gray stone. Now they noticed that the padlock was broken. So the big iron door swung slowly as they stepped inside. They noticed that the only light that was coming in to the building was through a big giant skylight right in the middle of the ceiling. Now, as they started looking around, they noticed that there was a big giant stone case right in the middle of the floor. But as they started really looking, they noticed that this was not a regular building. It was a mausoleum. And the stone case in the middle of the room, it was a stone coffin. Now, even though there wasn't anything else in there, it felt crowded somehow, like they weren't alone. Just then, they heard a man yelling to them from the outside. "Hey, what are you doing in there?" Helen and Bill looked at each other and said, "Well, we noticed that the padlock was broken, so we wanted to take a look." "You shouldn't have done that. He won't like it." "Well, who's he?" "He is the man that sleeps in that coffin." "But who's he?" Bill asked. "They used to call him Mr. Thomas. Now they just call him the Death Who Walks, now that he's dead." "I know, people have seen him, and I have seen him myself." Helen rolled her eyes and said, "Let's go, Bill." The man said, "You don't believe me?" "That's all right. I don't really care if you believe me. But know this, you better get out of the country as soon as you can, as fast as you can." Helen asked, "Well, why?" The man said, "Well, let me tell you a little story. Maybe you'll believe me then. Old Mr. Thomas came from Europe. Now, I say old, but he wasn't really. He just seemed that way. There was something in his eyes that seemed almost like death. He loved talking about death. He always was going on about how he could come back and walk again after death. Now, he came and bought the place, and then he fixed it up real nice until it looked brand new. And then he started building this building. There was something really weird about Mr. Thomas. I used to watch him at night. He would walk over to this place like he was in a trance. His eyes would shine, glisten. Something that just seemed very, very frightening. Well, a week before Mr. Thomas died, he came to me and told me, "You better keep taking care of this place. even after I die, or else I will come back and kill you. I've been taking care of this place ever since. A week after he told me that, he died just like that, and they put him inside the stone coffin. One night, I heard the big iron door swinging open and his slow, dragging-like footsteps coming out. I looked out, and under the full moon that had just come out, I saw his pasty, white, sickly-looking face. His eyes were like two burning coals in fire. He looked like he was looking at me, and he said, "They have disturbed my place. I shall follow them." And then he went on down the street. Sometime close to morning, I noticed that he was coming back. His footsteps, I could hear him, and I heard the big iron door swing behind him. I knew that he had come back. The next day, one of our neighbors had died, and he was screaming about how he didn't mean to go into the mausoleum. I knew who did it. I knew that he would follow any person so he could go ahead and kill him if anybody ever disturbed his place. At that moment, a shiver ran down the spines of Helen and Bill Mason. The man said, "That's why you have to get out of this part of the country as soon as you can, as fast as possible." Bill and Helen turned to leave. Before they left, they heard the man ruefully say, "I wish I had been here when you got here." So Bill and Mason went back to their hotel room. And even though they knew that they would laugh about this in a few months, they still couldn't shake the feeling that they were concerned, even though they didn't quite believe the caretaker's story. They felt concerned all the same. Now, Bill and Helen looked out the window, and they noticed that the moon was very high in the sky, and it looked like a beautiful night. Then they saw a man standing there in the street, pointing right up at them. He was dressed in a white suit, and his face was pale and sickly looking, and his eyes were like two burning coals in fire. Later that night, they checked the window again, and they noticed that the man had finally left. Now they didn't know what to believe. The man scared them so much. So as they decided to go to sleep, they started hearing footsteps from the room above. They called the hotel clerk to complain about the noise, but the hotel clerk said that the room above was unoccupied. So, as you can imagine, a short time later, they left the hotel room and they got immediately into the car and drove all night and all day. Finally, 1,000 miles later, they decided to stop at a motel to sleep for the night. Feeling pretty confident that the man couldn't possibly find them, they started getting ready for bed. But just then, they hear the footsteps, and this time, it was right outside their door. Helen screamed, saying that she saw the man's face right outside her window. The next morning, they went to pay the bill, and the motel owner said that there was this pasty-looking man, that came to tell the owner, to tell them that he would follow them. Bill and Helen went through a string of hotels and motels throughout several weeks on their way back home. And each time they heard the same footsteps, they saw his face at least once, and the same similar message was left for them at the front desk. Helen and Bill, they argued constantly since they've been on the run. Helen just wanted to go back home. But Bill kept saying that he would just follow them there. But Bill was tired of arguing, so he decided to just head back home. Now, 3 months after that fateful day, they finally arrived home, and for the first time in months, they finally felt at peace with no sense of danger whatsoever. They thought perhaps he couldn't follow them there. And for almost 3 months they were able to feel that peace. But then one night, everything shattered. Now, Bill and Helen were having dinner at around 10 o'clock when all of a sudden they heard the footsteps in the room right above them. Bill whispered, "He's back." And then he cautiously made his way up the stairs by himself. He peeked around the stairs. He noticed that the noise was coming from the guest bedroom. So he went to go and open the door, but it was empty. And then he heard Helen scream from downstairs. He ran quickly to get to her, but it was already too late. Helen was sitting in the armchair with a look of unimaginable horror in her face. She was dead. A few days after the funeral, Bill is sitting at home in the living room all by himself. He knows that he will come for him soon. So Bill decides to write everything that has been happening to him in a journal so that somebody may be able to understand him and how he died. And as he's close to finishing, he suddenly comes into the room. Bill can't see him yet, but he feels his presence. He knows he's there. He knows that his two burning coal of fire eyes are burning into him. And as Bill is writing, he says, "I pray that someone will read this. Perhaps he will." And that is the last thing he ever writes. The end.